There is the person in me that wants these $500 jeans. And there is the person in me that's watching that person and thinking, why does she think that's okay? Hi everyone, and welcome back to my No Buy Year. Today's video is actually a really exciting topic to explore, spurred by a couple of comments under one of my more recent videos. So I recently posted a video with the thumbnail title, I'm Feeling Influenced. And in that video, I talked about how a pair of $500 jeans is on my wish list. Has been for many months. I think I had them on my wish list since April this year, and they're still kind of floating around on my virtual wish list. I don't keep a wish list anymore. I've talked about that a lot already, but they're still kind of on my mind, which tells me that there is some kind of lingering feeling that I want these particular jeans. Now, the question is why? First of all, let me get this out of the way. I hugely admire anybody who takes the time to pose these questions in comments. And everybody who did so did it in a very respectful way. And I'm not criticizing the fact that I received these questions at all. In fact, it is one of the key parts of this journey that leads to my own reflection and growth, as you will see in the topics covered in this very discussion. So to cut to the chase, why do I want expensive jeans? Why do I think it's okay to want and possibly even buy $500 jeans? Is it going to set a precedent for always buying pants that cost $500? Can I just not want these pants? So these are some of the questions that arose in my comments and some of the ideas that I'm going to explore the mindsets and approaches to and the narratives that surround us in society about today. There are so many narratives about consumerism out there. There's the YOLO mentality where you should treat yourself because you only live once and therefore you deserve the $500 jeans or the expensive car or whatever the price point of the beauty treatments you want. It doesn't matter because you only live once, you deserve it. In another vein, there's the philosophy of hedonism, where the purpose of life is to seek pleasure, to experience pleasure. And so in some cases, we can philosophically rationalize ourselves into this concept that it's worth spending exorbitant amounts of money on things that we want, things that aren't needs, things that cheaper versions can be had of. There's narratives that more expensive things are more sustainable, and buying one expensive thing is better than buying 10 less expensive things. And on the basis of things we need, buying one pair of $500 jeans versus 10 pairs of $50 jeans, trying to find the right pair, if the $500 pair is truly the right pair, we have been kind of fed these narratives that the more sustainable thing to do is buy the one pair kind of regardless of cost up to a point, because that is more mindful than buying more cheaper pairs, if that makes sense. There are some caveats. Obviously, the cost per wear on the more expensive pair has to be just as good as it would be on a cheaper pair for that to make sense. And for a $500 pair of jeans, that would take literal years, right? To get that cost per wear down to even just $1 per wear would take probably over 2 years. There's only 365 days to wear those jeans in a year, and I'm gonna still have other pants options in my wardrobe. So they would have to be in my wardrobe for 5 to 10 years, I would say, to get that down to a comparable cost per wear as maybe a $50 pair or even a $100 pair of jeans. There's also the spectrum of financial responsibility, right? So it goes without saying, or I thought it went without saying, and it probably does not go without saying in actual fact, that I am not going into debt for things that I want, things that aren't needs, or even things that are needs, ideally, aside from a home mortgage. We paid off all of our loan kind of purchases, cars, my instrument, those were paid off years ago. We're not going back into debt aside from the home. And we try to have a reasonable emergency fund. We're trying to build that, which again is a case for a better place for that money to go, which this is a tricky one because there will always be a better place for that money to go. It will always be a better decision for that $500 to go invested in the stock market or towards our home emergency fund. So this is kind of one of those self-defeating narratives where if I want to have a treat, want to treat myself, it's not necessarily at the expense of one of these other things, even if it actually is, because that is literal money that I'm not putting into one of these other categories. So there's the financial responsibility narrative. And again, because it's a spectrum, it's hard to justify, or it's hard to tell myself that I'm being super bad about it or this is hard to explain actually. Hopefully what I'm trying to say is going to come across, but it's hard to feel like I'm being really bad when I'm not going into debt, when there's so many societal narratives about people going into consumer debt, if that makes sense. And it's not that I am basing myself on comparison in society intentionally, but it does tend to happen subconsciously, I think. And when I have this idea that so many people have, the average is $6,000 of consumer debt, or whatever the statistic is that I keep seeing in these financial videos, and I don't have that average statistic of consumer debt because we worked hard to pay that off and to not get back into it. It's kind of easy for me to justify, oh, I'm being good with my money comparatively, even if that's not actually being good with my money, and maybe I can treat myself to these expensive purchases occasionally. And I, again, don't even think that it's fundamentally wrong to treat oneself to an expensive purchase, although the thing is that might be because of all these narratives of society that I have believed. One of the things about a no-buy year is that, unfortunately, it doesn't solve all of your conceived narratives of society, of consumerism, of things to want and to buy. The no-buy year is a wonderful thing, and it does solve a lot of problems just by doing it. It does force a lot of personal reflection. I'm going to save all this for a no-buy recap at the end of the year, so I'll get deeper into those feelings and results and things that it does and doesn't address in a more direct way. However, I have realized that it doesn't automatically change how I see buying things, wanting things, the value of things, and when it's worth spending more money on things, or even kind of lusting after a particular thing, because I haven't been exercising those muscles of curating and buying in the same way. It's almost like those muscles have been on a break from working out at all during the no-buy year. And now that the holidays are approaching, and again, I'm going to do a little chat on how perhaps the holidays are or are not an acceptable time to buy things we don't need. Stay tuned for that. Now that the holidays are approaching, I am confronted with these decisions of I might be adding things to my life that I don't strictly need, and what am I going to do about that? How am I going to handle that? And there's a couple of months still to kind of grapple with this before holidays are really upon us and presents are being opened under the tree. My birthday is also in January, so for me it's kind of like a double whammy coming up of like, oh, it's a good time to maybe acquire things for a little savings on retail price if I have a list going into the sale season, the shopping season. But at the same time, this is not going to lead into a spiral of overconsumerism. I have to have a plan. I have to have a very thought out plan in the time that I have to think out my plans, if that makes sense. And again, there will be more shared on these specific kind of topics, you know, the wish list for the sales, kind of how to navigate the sales and stick to your list, not be suckered into the tactics that are going to be used on us to try to get us to add more things to our purchases, all of these things. And then, you know, how much is reasonable for Christmas and birthdays, and is there alternatives that we can pursue that can make us feel better, have less impact on the planet, on our finances, etc. So all of that is coming. Okay, so I think I was talking about the spectrum of financial responsibility and how one of the narratives that I kind of believe subconsciously is that because I'm not going into debt, it's actually okay to spend some of the money that I have on things that I don't strictly need. And in the realm of expensive versus cheap goods, it's okay to spend on expensive things. And again, part of that is because of the idea that it's more sustainable, more conscious, more mindful. People are getting paid better along the supply chain. More thought has gone into the designs and the care of construction of the garments. The idea of quality over quantity, I guess, even the idea of fewer, nicer things that has been floating around on the internet. And I guess one could say that I bought these narratives. I believed these narratives. I consumed that kind of content for so long. The minimalist content, the conscious consumer content, the sustainability content, that I have internalized some of these ideas where a $200 sweater might be the price that a sweater should actually cost for everyone to get paid fairly. But the problem is where one keeps acquiring things at this price point and doesn't necessarily approach it as if that's the last sweater. And at some point it's kind of like lifestyle creep, right? When one $200 sweater, or even two, you know, to alternate to be able to wash one or whatever it is, might have been the norm for previous generations. And now here we are with 5 or 10 of them. And it's more than we strictly need. And it's not necessarily the problem that it's a $200 sweater and that we were trying to make sure things were sustainably sourced, people got paid fairly. It's a problem that we're still over-consuming in this regard. But again, maybe that's just one of the narratives that I believe because I haven't unlearned everything during my no-buy year. Is it better to buy the cheaper sweater and treat it the same as the more expensive sweater? And in some cases, it absolutely is, in cases where we can't legitimately afford the $200 sweater. In other cases, people who just don't have a thing for clothes perhaps would be better served by putting their money elsewhere. Arguably, everybody would be better served putting their money elsewhere as well. But again, I have a chat coming up about how loving fashion could possibly just be an enabling narrative for us to consume clothing, overconsume clothing. So watch out for that later. This comment thread led to a series of mind-blowing realizations and paths that I was going down, thought experiments. And again, I'm so grateful for the dialogue on this channel. I'm thankful for myself in sharing what was kind of a little bit of a vulnerable admission, that I still want $500 pants at this stage of my no-buy year. I still have a massive purse collection. Oops, I did get a request to put some paper on these boxes because somebody didn't like them behind my head. I am sorry I didn't do that this video. I will try to do that for the next one. I'll probably take them down. Okay, so we covered the financial responsibility spectrum. There is also a spectrum of expensive goods out there, right? One can do a Google search for jeans. I was approaching the question of what do we get from $500 jeans that we don't get from $50 jeans? And just for curiosity, I typed in most expensive jeans, and what popped up was some Bottega Veneta jeans for $7,000, $6,900, something like that. It's without question that jeans that are over $1,000, even over $500. I'm gonna be honest, $500 is my kind of mental block of I can't spend more than that on any piece in my wardrobe, let alone, I know jeans are kind of maybe some people's worst thing to spend that much money on because they get worn so much and maybe get worn out and the quality is the same over different types of denim, arguably. We'll address that in a second, but I have kind of a mental barrier above $500. I have some items that approach this. I never have gone over $500 on a single item in my wardrobe and never will because I can't, that's my threshold, right? So when we're looking at $6,000 pairs of jeans, I can look at that and I can say that's absolutely ridiculous. There's no value there. That is a brand, that is a status symbol. Some of them have kind of visible indications that they're Bottega Veneta or whatever. I'm not interested in that at all. And I do realize that my Bottega Veneta $6,000 jeans might be the same as somebody else looking at my $500 jeans. What is the distinction that creates these different thresholds of price acceptability for each individual? Like I said, part of it for me, I think, is that I have a narrative in my mind that I like fashion and I like sculptural fashion. I like kind of not openly branded, but kind of luxurious fashion, if I'm honest. I like to have things that I think are nicer than the average, and a pair of Levi's jeans doesn't really convey nicer than average. They're kind of the average ballpark. I have Levi's jeans, don't get me wrong. I love to wear them. I don't think there's anything wrong with them. But because of this identified narrative as I don't want to say I'm a fashion girly because I'm not up with the trends, especially now that I've stepped away from being influenced. I don't want to go around seeing things that are trendy or current and wanting them or wanting to update my wardrobe. That's not what it is. But there is a narrative that I have that I would like to have nice things, dare I say fewer nicer things. I'm not making fun of that, by the way. I realize that it's a narrative now, that it's not something that's inherently true or inherently something I have to be pursuing, but it is something that I realize that has been kind of subconsciously drilled into my mind through consuming years worth of this content from minimalist channels. Like I said, I went through the whole list earlier, minimalist sustainability channels, mindful consumers, all of that it's so deep within myself that is that why I want $500 jeans? And even at 20% off, call it $400 jeans. I am doing research on what the best price I might possibly get for these jeans if I go new from the retailer is, and it seems like a 20% discount is typically the most that you might get. There is an introductory order discount as well of, I believe, 15%. So, you know, it'll be $400 to $430 for the jeans. I don't know if that makes a difference to any of the viewers here as far as like if $400 isn't too much, but $500 is. I think the point is they're very expensive jeans. What am I getting here that I'm not getting from a regular pair or a functional pair, a pair that's priced for the actual value of the garment? And so if you ask me that in a kind of off-the-cuff way, I would say, look, I like the style, I like how sculptural they are. In my mind, I imagine that they will fit a certain way, and if they don't, they will obviously be sent back, right? I don't want them for the sake of having them. I want them for what they're going to do for my wardrobe. And I have a video coming about if I could only keep one option of every category in my wardrobe. And in my pants category, those pants on my wish list would be the one, right? If they actually fit the way that I imagine them to and have measured, you know, I've been doing my research, or trying to, but they would be the one. And that is an indication to me that they are not going to be sitting on my shelf after I buy them. What happened with my other Tibby jeans that I bought heavily discounted earlier this year, I think they were $116, which is still expensive, but it's definitely not $500 or $400. Those became my most worn jeans. And if those jeans were full length, those would be my one, but they're not. And it's not, again, this is not a narrative where I'm saying, oh, I need a full length pair of Tibby expensive jeans. Like, nobody needs that. But I do have proof of concept as far as wearing a sculptural pair of jeans more often than any of my other pants, and I can wear them at home and at work. So there's no barrier to where I can wear them based on styling. The full-length jeans that are on my wish list, I believe, have a long enough inseam that they will be long enough, and they have snaps in the back, so you can snap them up if they're too long, dragging in the back. I've, again, done extensive measuring to see what waist measurement I would need to get. I'm also dealing with outgrowing some of my pants. I touched on this in my first outfits of fall, and I will touch on this again in the video of if I could only keep one. I'm also talking about if I had to declutter one in that video. And some of my pants are just tighter than I would like them to be. And it's actually kind of sad. One of them is one of my favorite pairs of pants. And then another one is a pair of pants that I got recently that I, again, viscerally remember wanting, but are just simply too tight to wear comfortably. My approach these days with things that can be passed on is to pass them on and let somebody else get wear out of them as they are, instead of trying to finagle the waist to make them bigger and maybe ruining the pants entirely when I really don't need another pair of pants. She says this as she talks about wanting a very expensive pair of pants. But my point is, those would be the ones in my wardrobe as far as the vision of my style, my comfort level, and just functionality. So in this regard, it's not the same as the influenced purchases that I had been doing in the years leading up to this no-buy year. It's influenced by my wardrobe, my desires, my proof of concept as far as the things that I like to wear, and also a reflection of the change in my environment and style and even body to some degree, because I would be getting them in a large enough size that they would be able to be worn with some fluctuations. And I think the style allows for that, right? They're not supposed to be form-fitting on the rear or anything like that. So there is more flexibility as far as being able to wear them looser and have them last through more body changes, developments, even just, you know, monthly cycles and things like that. Okay, so anyway, we've covered now the financial responsibility. We've covered the spectrum of crazy as far as price points for clothes in general, but it applies to many categories, right? There's cheap cars, middle price cars, expensive cars, and I'm not an expensive car person, so I would never think of dropping another 20 grand on something nicer in the car department. Same as, you know, I can understand somebody might be like this with the jeans. Again, if you like cars, is that a good reason to spend that much more money on a car if you have the money? But perhaps I'll come back to that topic. I did want to touch on the other items in my wardrobe that approached the high price point and how they fared in terms of longevity, in terms of style, in terms of how much I like them today. Do I like them as much as I thought I would? And the answer, luckily, is yes. For both of those items, I have two items that were above $400. And one of them is my coat, and it's the cashmere wool Mute by JL coat here. It's got the kind of artistic back panel. It's a very soft, warm coat, and it approached the $500 mark. I still love it just as much as when I first got it, and I don't plan to acquire any other wool coats of this nature. I have a North Face kind of down jacket for snow play, but other than that, this is just my one nice coat. And I don't feel the need to look for or acquire another one. And nothing that happens in the world of trends, in the world of fashion, can make me not like this coat, in my opinion. Never say never, but that's not what I value about this coat. This coat feels like my style. And I'm just as excited to wear it every season. I think this is my 4th or 5th season with it. I had it in Texas. And I love this detail. The back detail, the contrast panels, the 2-tone or even 3-tone with the blue. Like I said, nothing is going to make me not like that coat. It doesn't matter if somebody says I look terrible in it. It doesn't matter if the trends change and nobody's wearing camel, khaki, beige coats. I am going to continue wearing that coat. And it's not because it was expensive, right? The price isn't the reason why I like it, but the approach to the purchase, because it was expensive, was perhaps a key part in this coat having longevity, both in terms of use value, practicality, and style. The other item is a bag, and it's the large Polen Sim tote bag. Again, the price did inform aspects of this purchase. It came in 4 colors when I got it, I believe. It might come in even more now. It comes in 2 shades of brown, a gray taupe color, and then the black. Because it's an expensive purchase for me, it was on the upper end of my threshold of acceptable, I opted for the black. And I'm so happy that I did, actually. I do have the smaller brown one, which again was cheaper. It's also seemingly lower quality. The stitching is more flawed, but this black one goes with my concert black outfits. It carries music. That's kind of the point. You know, got music in here. I took it to a gig and it was sitting, you know, on the floor by the wall. And I caught myself looking at it and I thought, that's a beautiful bag. And not trying to influence anybody to buy a handbag or to look at the Polens or anything like that. But I still like it. And nothing, when it goes out of trend, it has had a period of very high trendiness, right? And that's kind of when I was looking at it, when I was, dare I say, obsessed with it. No, I'm not obsessed with material items. But that was kind of the period where I was looking at it, wanting it, and eventually buying it. And I would not buy it after the price increase took it past $500. Even though I like it, I can't bring myself to pay that much money for a material item in my wardrobe. It doesn't matter how much I like it. You know, I have functional things, so there's a threshold. And maybe that threshold should be lowered, but that might be a chat for another day. Anyway, I caught myself looking at it and I thought, what a beautiful bag. I'm happy to own it. I don't think any fall from trendiness is going to make me use it less, like it less. It is going to be my nice leather tote bag for the duration that it lasts, and I'm going to try to take care of it so that it can last my whole life. Now, I do have other tote bags. I have a nylon long chomp one, and then, you know, it's possible that I might have other kind of more sporty, casual, large bags, but they're not going to fulfill that same function of kind of the sharp black leather large bag, and I'm not looking for anything else to fulfill that function. And again, it's not because it was expensive, but I think, again, the price point informed the research and the considerations and some of the choices involved in that purchase. And all of the same things are happening for these jeans. And does that make it any better? Does that make it reasonable? Not necessarily. Are the jeans going to do anything that a cheaper pair of jeans don't do? No, right? They're a pair of pants. They're going to cover my body. They're going to provide the look of a blue jean with anything I wear that I want to wear a blue jean with. They do have a sculptural element that can be found from other brands at cheaper price points. I am worried that the other brands are not long enough in inseam based on measurements. Some of them I've seen modeled on people before, and they are clearly going to be too short or too barrel legs for me. I'm not looking to have a super trendy shape. I'm just looking to have that sculptural kind of excess fabric element in a pair of denim pants. It kind of marries the wide leg trouser with a pair of denim, and not in a formal way, in like a more sculptural, artistic way. And again, I hesitate to wax poetic on these specific jeans because my intention is not to be influencing in any way, not to enable us wanting and buying one expensive thing. Like, that is not the intention of this conversation. And so if I do end up purchasing these things, I'm definitely not going to do an unboxing, because that's not what this channel is about. And I don't think an unboxing is a representative experience for the life of a product. I don't think it's a review. I don't think any useful information happens from opening your presents on camera and hyping about them and kind of showing that happiness that comes with a temporary new thing. No, but they will, if I get them, show up in my outfit videos if I continue to do those in the years to come after this initial no-buy. Fashion without shopping, I think, is a positive thing to see, although technically bringing in one pair of jeans will still be shopping, but the general goal is to present fashion without shopping. And I do think there will be a limit of new wardrobe pieces for the years to come, a fairly low limit of new things to be brought in. Again, all of that to be touched on again in the future. The next thing I wanted to touch on is the concept of being rebellious and the narrative that it feels good to be bad, or it kind of goes paired with the YOLO treat yourself mentality where you deserve it. You deserve to buy yourself the expensive XYZ thing. And maybe it feels bad to spend your money, a huge chunk of money in this way. Maybe it feels irresponsible, but in some ways, there is a narrative out there from society telling us that some level of being irresponsible is sexy and captivating and desirable and rebellious. It feels good to be bad. And there is an element of that in, I think, my whole family, if I'm honest. My husband, I've kind of touched on this in comments, he doesn't buy much, but when he does buy something, it is usually the nice version of a thing. So he's gotten into running. He tends to get the premium running shoes. Maybe not like the top of the price point, right? It's not like the Chanel handbag of running shoes. Again, like the spectrum of crazy. It's not the $8,000 jeans. It's not the $1,000 or $500 shoes, but it is not the $50 shoes, right? Or even the $100 shoes. We're going up a little bit from there. Same with things like car parts and lawn equipment, right? We don't have a nice car, but my husband does have a classic car that he will restore and swap out the engine in. And again, these things tend to be expensive. He doesn't buy parts often, but when he does, he's looking for the nice, best quality one, and it will be a bigger chunk of money. And I think his parents were kind of the same. My parents, not so much. They were kind of more openly frugal and kind of honestly made me worry about money a little bit more as a child. My mom especially was very, not even necessarily thrifty, but we had a lot of hand-me-downs, and she did not see the value in spending more on something. She was much more in the camp of, what does a $200 pair of jeans do that a $50 pair can't do? In fact, let's go to Walmart and get the $20 pair. And that was not a mentality that I enjoyed at the time, because often it did involve wearing low quality, too short, dyed blue jeans where the wash was clearly not thoughtfully done, just things like that. And maybe part of it is me trying to escape this kind of mentality and entering into the one of the family that I live more closely with. My husband's parents aren't out here spending a lot of money in their older years. And my husband, like I said, doesn't buy things very often. But there is a little bit of that mentality seeping in, I guess, to the way that I approach shopping, right? And it's not even that they're openly rebellious or that it's like, oh, it feels good to spend a lot of money and be financially irresponsible. Again, we're not doing the debt thing. We're saving up for the purchases as we do them. We're trying to build the emergency fund, and I am putting more in place, more auto payments going to savings and retirement accounts. So it is getting better in that regard as well. It's not that I'm neglecting that side of the financial goals we want to reach. I'm also historically going to be getting a lot more income over the holiday season. There's more gigs. I've already had substantially more gigs in October. So the Christmas budget is more or less taken care of. It's not that it's going to be financially detrimental as far as putting us in a hard spot. And I kind of already covered that, so I won't dwell on that here. But again, going back to some more of the questions in the comments, it really turned a light bulb on for me, because what I realized is that there is the person in me that wants these $500 jeans. And there is the person in me that's watching that person and thinking, why does she think that's okay? Why is that acceptable? What happened to lead to this point of thinking? Because I didn't grow up wealthy. I didn't have the concept that, my parents weren't even buying me $100 jeans. So what happened along the way that created this person that now is contemplating seriously buying $500 jeans. This whole endeavor is kind of in the realms of ridiculous in a way. And why the observer in me is observing the lab rat, right? Lab rat me, who's just living my life wanting $500 pants. The scientist up here saying, why do you think that's acceptable? What happened? What narratives have shaped your thinking to put you on this path? And I don't know that I'm going to be able to unlearn the social narratives, the influencer narratives even, whatever it is, that have conspired to making me want and think that this level of purchase is okay. And so I very well may end up having these as a Christmas present, and I don't think it's going to set a precedent because I am committed to getting to the bottom of it. And I don't think jeans are a category of clothing. I don't think any category of clothing, honestly, is a category where you need more than one $500 version of something, right? I don't think it's going to set a precedent to answer that question, because I really think, again, using the approach of, if I could only keep one, would this be the one? And that means you're not out here looking for more than the one, because you already have the one. In the case of my jeans wardrobe, I don't feel like I have the one. And there is a danger of always being looking for the one too. And this is maybe a little bit outside the scope of this conversation, because I have not been searching for the one pair of jeans. So this is not really a reflection of that. And not to say that that's not a thing that happens, it certainly does. I have been in the trap before of trying to find the one of something. But this is not necessarily what's happening here either. My point is that when you approach your wardrobe, if you already have the one or even a one that you feel happy about, right? It doesn't have to be the final end all be all. But when I went through my wardrobe and picked the top one of each category, I do have a lot of love and appreciation, in a platonic clothing way, right? We're not confusing love anyway. But I do have a lot of appreciation for my favorite in each category. So I already have favorites. And when I look at my favorites, for the most part, I'm happy, I'm content. I don't need anything else. And when I think of these jeans being my favorite pair of jeans, that's kind of the end of the line. Because barring any new realizations as far as the world of fashion, the world of style, the world of possibilities, I don't have a concept of what I could want more in any pair of pants than what these pants embody. And again, by that I mean the sculptural element, if they're actually long enough for me and if they're comfortable. And that's kind of the top three. Like, if they do all these things in better ways than anything I've ever experienced, then I feel like that's the end of the line. The precedent is not going to be set. I don't physically need more than that one pair of jeans and the other pairs of pants that I already own. My mission, my long-term approach is to try to not bring in new things, to bring in very limited numbers of new things, to approach it in a need-based way. And I guess the fact that some of my pants have gotten a little tight is nudging me into a need-based motivation for acquiring a pair or two of slightly larger pants. But again, that's not my first port of call. My first kind of test is to put away the slightly too small pants and see how it feels to just have a smaller catalog of pants, just to have fewer options. Okay, to get back to the narratives that we've seen, especially in influencer culture, that I have been molded by and have kind of taken on board maybe to too much of an extent, to a greater extent than I should have, in order to arrive at this point that me on my kind of lower normal level of income, call it an average level of income in terms of our household, am looking at buying over average, above average levels of expensive clothes. Not everybody who consumes this kind of content will be swayed enough to actually make these purchases, right? I can tell even just from people in my comments who share that they've seen some of the same content, but they've not been influenced to buy the same things, or they just can't afford it and they just don't prioritize buying that kind of stuff, or in some cases, sometimes these products aren't even available where they live. But for various reasons, not everybody who sees the same kind of narratives will fall into the same traps. But I do think that more people who see this stuff will fall into the traps than if they had not seen it at all. So when I think of a brand like Cezanne, that's very much an influencer brand influencer featured brand. For years, I would see the collections of New In at Cezanne and, oh, the company let me pick out some things from their new collection. And even sustainable creators are doing videos like this, showcasing new pieces from this brand. If I had not seen the wealth of content featuring that brand, would I have looked into this company and purchased so many pieces? And my journey with that brand in particular has actually been more extensive than my wardrobe currently shows. I've had many Cezanne pieces that I've realized really don't reflect my style, and I've passed on, I've resold. And a lot of the styles that I passed on were more feminine. They had more kind of ruffle details, lace, the broderie anglaise, kind of really beautiful to look at pieces that really did not represent my style. And I did wear them for a time, right? When I was teaching, when I was being a community outreach musician in Houston, I would actually wear more of these pieces because I, for whatever reason, perceived them as more formal and thought that I had to present more formally, more kind of in a fussy, feminine, formal way. Again, not knocking you if that's your actual style, but it just didn't match with me. And I hadn't discovered the blazer life as far as being able to formalize a very casual outfit just by throwing on the workwear element, the kind of masculine androgynous way to be more formal. But if I hadn't been exposed to the influencers and their Cezanne collections, would I have made so many purchases that weren't right for me? And I do have some Cezanne pieces in my wardrobe, right? I've kept some of the knitwear, I've kept some of the dresses, one dress actually, and some of the kind of, one of the cotton tops. It's not been a lot that survived. There's a small handful of pieces, but I do think if I hadn't seen it exposed so much content featuring these clothes in front of my eyeballs, and again, it's my fault for watching. I'm not saying that anybody made me watch or that it's beyond my capabilities to just have not watched that stuff at that time. But I was at transitional points in my life, right? I was entering different jobs. I was kind of looking for guidance as to how to look more formal and more put together. And this is just some of the stuff that I found, some of the stuff that was out there. There's so much out there with an emphasis on acquiring new things, on exploring new brands, on shopping, on evolving your style by bringing in new things, by taking inspiration from the trends, that I would have seen some form of consumerist content, I feel, in looking for inspiration on how to look more grown up for a new job. Also, we see less representations of a normal closet with a normal level of clothes. I've said this before, but I would see examples of closets full of clothes, full of options, even in capsule styling wardrobe videos. It was made by a creator who had multiple capsules worth of clothing in their wardrobe. And so internally, I was probably seeing these examples and a little bit of that was rubbing off. It was molding my subconscious into thinking that, oh, okay, it's okay to totally fill your wardrobe or your available space with stuff, or desirable to do so. And even as I was consuming minimalist content on the other side, sometimes at the same time of my life, right? Like I was kind of aware that maybe having too much stuff wasn't good, but in some ways the minimalists' ethos of consciously choosing your things kind of married this presentation of quality and acquisition to result in this kind of deadly cocktail of buy the nicest one possible, but maybe try different things so that you know what the best one is for you. And again, not everybody is going to experience these reactions that I had, and I'm not trying to blame any exterior source. I'm not saying it's not my own fault or my own choices that led to this. But 20 years ago, there wasn't the wealth of YouTube videos on styling or fashion that there is today. It's a changing social landscape that I was not equipped to handle, to consume the content of in a conscious way, as I'm consciously trying to do this year, trying to digitally detox and learn how to evaluate what I'm consuming. And I just don't think I'm the only one that this happened to or happened for. In other words, I was drinking that Kool-Aid for a long time, and it's going to probably take a lot more than a year to get to the point where I no longer subscribe to some of these mentalities that were not organic to me. I just saw another one of Alliston Bornstein's YouTube videos, the book that I reviewed, Wear It Well, that I discovered was totally not in line with how I want to approach my own clothes, my own wardrobe. And once again, the video felt like it was done by somebody living on another planet. Some of the things that she was talking about as far as styling and the ways that she was claiming to be more conscious about it did not look like they were conscious at all to somebody who stepped away from that kind of environment. The thing is, I used to be on that planet. I used to be much more in that mindset of like, ooh, to be conscious is to look for the nicest thing, the most high quality thing, the most sustainable thing. It doesn't really matter if it's expensive, right? That's more conscious. That's more minimalist even. That's the best way to do it. But even after only a year, I can see that that's a different planet of existence, a different plane of existence, and I can't justify over-consuming. You know, I am starting to feel the burden of things like my handbag collection. And while I might not necessarily be taking immediate action or even long-term action, right? In the case of my one brand of handbag that I kind of have a collection of, I do still enjoy seeing them, even if I cognitively feel more and more that nobody needs that quantity of bags in terms of practical use. And in some ways, does this make them less actually valuable if I'm not going to be using them all? Or, you know, I'm not necessarily stepping away from using them all even right now. Like, I do like to rotate, match them kind of with my look. I guess in a way, enjoy the excess. And while I am committed to stopping the continued accumulation of excess, and I don't want to model this kind of hoarding of excess as a general rule, it's still a little bit of a patch of brambles, I guess you could say, on my path. Because on one hand, you know, I can't just snap my fingers and undo the damage and just have a reasonable collection of stuff. I have what I have. It's been years in the making, and not just in the physical act of purchasing and collecting, but in the mentalities that shaped how this all happened. So it's going to be a little bit of a long journey. Do I think, in principle, if somebody really gets a lot of joy from leather goods, from handbags, whatever, and again, I know there's an issue of animal cruelty there. I am not going to be addressing that in this video. Does that make it worse? Anyway, do I think that it's fundamentally wrong for somebody who enjoys handbags to have 12 handbags, for example? And this is an interesting question to pose because in my world, the world in which I operate and exist, if we're thinking about somebody having 12, 20, 50 designer handbags that are all around $5,000 or $10,000, that to me does seem like a poor choice financially. It does seem excessive. At the same time, I can also say that me, with having 12 handbags that are in the $200 to $500 range, that is probably the same for somebody who only has one handbag and doesn't really mind, you know, what price point that bag is. It could be a $20 nylon bag and they're fine and they're happy and they don't see the need or the enjoyment that somebody might get from having an excess of expensive handbags. And again, what steps led me on this path? There's a lot to unpack in this story. I can agree with all of these people on the spectrum, right? If you're making good money or have generational wealth or whatever, and you get a lot of enjoyment from having $50,000, $20,000 Birkin bags, right? Or, you know, you see the Kardashian closets or whatever, and they go around with these limited edition designer Birkins and crocodile skin or whatever, things that I'm not interested in the least. Is that fundamentally wrong? It's easy to point at the top levels of excess and say, wow, that's not realistic. That might be wrong. That might be unethical. In the middle, I feel like is this gray area where I do not, you know, all of my handbags combined are not even $5,000, if I remember correctly from when I did that video on all of my polens. And again, it's not necessarily a dollar amount that's concerning. It's kind of, regardless, it's an example of some form of overconsumption because nobody needs this many bags. I'm one person and I have 12 bags up here, right? And that's not even all of the bags that I own. It's just this one brand. So really, I can look at this person and say, you don't need any more bags. You don't need any more jeans. You don't need any more anything. And I am actively trying to do the work to not buy things, not just this year, but beyond, you know, for the years to come. I am going to continue a no-buy kind of project, even if it's not as strict of an approach as this year. I actually hope to have better results as far as not actually buying as many things, because continued work on this path, I think, will make it easier and easier, as it already has gotten a little bit easier from when I started. So I guess the thing is, I want to emphasize the point that I agree with all of your comments, right? Anybody who thinks buying $500 jeans is totally wacko and crazy, I agree with you. I have been corrupted, right? I have also allowed myself to be corrupted. Again, I'm not blaming anybody. I don't want that to be the take home here. I get some comments like that as well, especially on videos that tend to get more views. There's always a few people that get mad or have something to say about the fact that I'm sitting here complaining about all these other factors and not taking personal responsibility. I mean, I realized I needed to take responsibility. That's why I did a no-buy year, right? So I've tried to get better. I'm trying to change. I recognize that I have stepped into this problem for myself, right? I'm not blaming anybody else, or I'm not trying to appear to blame anybody else. I do think I have come a fairly long way. And in response to the answer of, can I just not want the jeans? I think the answer is kind of, which is maybe not reassuring. But what I mean by that is, I know that I will be okay if I never get those jeans. I mean that, right? I'm not here pining away for them. I don't wake up every day thinking, oh, if only I had those jeans. It's not a case of how I wanted things before. And maybe I wasn't waking up every day thinking about something, but there were times where a brand would have a new collection drop, and I would be right there, at the time of drop to make sure that I could get what was being released before it sold out or whatever. I don't feel the same about these jeans. They could not be available, and I would be a little disappointed. Honestly, I'd be disappointed, but it would also be a case of, well, on flows the stream. There are other jeans that exist in life. I have hopefully more years of life ahead of me, many more years, and I will grow and I will change, and different pairs of pants will float along my radar. My long-term approach is still going to try to be reluctance to buy, not approaching as if I can buy new pants. I mean, maybe that's not the right way of saying it, because I guess I would like to approach as if I can, but I don't need to, or I don't want to. And I'm continuing to do the work of appreciating what I have, of trying to kind of contextualize what a human needs and not be in the position of looking for new jeans or wanting new jeans. So to answer your question, I clearly have demonstrated that over the course of this year, I can't just not want the jeans, because I do still want them after however many months, 8 months or something of having them on my radar, maybe 6 months, because it's not yet December. But my feelings about wanting them are totally different. So I think that is the good news. I do also believe that as I do more years of no-buy work, I will get to the point where I just won't have these things on my radar, even from the beginning of this year. And again, I'm kind of spoiling my no-buy recap, but that'll probably be released in late December, so you can come back and hear me say some of these same things. Even from the beginning of this year, I had massive wish lists of things that I just saw and kind of wanted. And now I don't have nearly the things that I would say that I want. In fact, the things that I want are actually residual from the wish list I had at the beginning of the year. I don't know if there's a single thing that I'm thinking about maybe adding to my Christmas list that wasn't from earlier. So if I continue this work into the year to come and start from now, where I'm not making wish lists, where there's not a bunch of things that I see and want, am I going to have a Christmas list next year? Where is that stuff going to come from? If I don't see the things and have kind of inklings of things that I want, what am I going to want? How is it going to look, I guess? Long term, do I think I can just not want things in general? I think the answer is yes, but only time will tell. And I don't think it's totally outlandish to think that maybe even as soon as next holiday season, I will be approaching it in a completely different way. Part of the reason I'm not doing that this year is because I didn't really have a concept of getting this far and changing the landscape of the holidays, the gift-giving traditions. I am happy to leave that for years to come when I have more of the mental energy to explore the options. This year's kind of information gathering, right? Trying to see what feels like a maybe reasonable amount of gifts. Next year, especially if I don't have a wish list and don't want things and have decreased my attachment to acquiring new stuff in general, I can see that the time might be ripe for changing traditions in the years to come. Another example from earlier this year is that I considered lesser occasions worthy of gifts, right? And I think I'm going to go more into this in a specific chat on whether Christmas and birthdays is an acceptable time to add new things. So I'll save that for later. Another comment on how one man's trash is another man's treasure and all that. There's a whole category of consumerism that I was never that big into, and I'm really not into it now. So anything, TJ Maxx, Home Goods, Target, I was never really the person to go do a Target run and get sucked into buying a lot of random things. That's just not my way of consumerism. And so, maybe I have taken on the narratives that I feel like serve me as far as looking for that one expensive thing or 10 expensive thing, whatever I was, in the years of influence, it was not just one expensive thing, I'm gonna be honest. But I did not take on board the narratives of, oh, let's go to Home Goods and get some decor, right? So in some ways, there is some indication that there was a somewhat conscious approach even to the unconscious influence and consumption. And I just thought that was interesting too. We all probably have different categories that we're more willing to spend money on. Even those of us who prioritize saving or traveling or experiences, I guess that is a habit of spending to cultivate too, right? If I want to put my money towards travel or something like a language class or going to the gym, I need to start making that a habit. Like, that's not just a day and night switch, right? To start valuing the experience. And we're told this all the time, right? Social media feeds us, oh, you should buy experiences instead of things, whatever, you'll get more value, make the memories. But to change the whole habit isn't just a day or night, oh, I heard the advice, I'm gonna do it. Like, there's a little bit more work that needs to be done there to make the shift, and then also make sure that one is not consuming travel and experiences in a not conscious way as well, which is a topic that I've kind of touched a little bit as far as how experiences are not just a be-all end-all solution in some cases. I guess my bottom line for this discussion is that I do have it on my reading list to read the book Wanting by Luke Burgess, which I guess talks about mimetic desire, like miming, right? Like you see people doing certain things and you kind of want to do that kind of stuff too, is what I gather that might be. And again, I can't speak to it with research or data before having read the book, but even so, I think it's fair to say that through the years of content consuming and the narratives that I was absorbing, both in real life and in social media, I think it's fair to say that I was setting myself up to want a whole bunch of stuff and to want things in a certain way and to have certain beliefs about price and quality or price and design and value and these different facets of consumerism, these different kind of categories of consumerism. And while I do think that there may be some element of added value in these particular $500 jeans versus the $50 Levi's, design, slightly better material quality, slightly better attention to detail in the finishing of the garment, it's definitely not proportional to the jump in price. And it's definitely not necessarily, in this case anyway, it's not a designer pursuit. There will be no branding on the jeans, the $500 jeans. In fact, I would prefer that nobody knows how much they cost, right? It's people online here that are watching me talk about it who will know what my pants cost. But in real life, nobody will know. And to me, that is one of the selling points, right? If they had Gucci emblazoned on the butt pocket or something, I would be embarrassed to have other people think that I would spend that much money on a pair of jeans, because that level of spending on clothing is not in line with the values that I would like to present. And, to that point, is spending $500 in line with the values that I would like to present? And if I had not consumed all the influencing content, would I be in this place of being okay with it? Finally, if I do end up buying these jeans, I will not be justifying it. So if there's one thing that I've tried to do in my no-buy year and will try to continue doing beyond, is I acknowledge that I am hypocritical. Humans are hypocritical, but especially in this journey of not buying stuff and buying stuff, failing, but also humans having to buy stuff to exist, this is an inherently hypocritical journey. And in this instance, it's particularly hypocritical. And again, I'm still the lab rat in the midst of this change, working on myself, and I'm the scientist watching that lab rat, making the observations of, wow, she still wants this and she's gonna buy these jeans. This is crazy, but like, let me take notes and observe and maybe change the lab rat's environment so that this rat does not fall into the same trap. I guess the one thing that I'm kind of clinging on to here is that, yes, I'm hypocritical, but at least I'm going to try to be hypocritical in an open and honest way, okay? So nobody can make Reddit threads about how conscious consumerism's Alexa is so hypocritical. She's already said it all herself. How can this person be complaining about not having enough money or minor home emergencies and dental emergencies coming up and then spend $500 on pants? Like, yes, totally hypocritical, kind of stupid, but here we are. No justifications, no excuse. I'm not even saying that this is because I've been influenced. It's me, it's my fault, it's my problem. I have more work to do. And once again, thank you so much to the thoughtful comments and the discussion on that video and other videos that have helped me reach this point of realizing I am the lab rat and the scientist. For whatever reason, whenever I think I'm the lab rat, it's to the tune of I'm the walrus. So you might see that feature in a video title later for my recap of my no-buy year, because this is kind of an important light bulb moment for me. So if you've stayed to the end of this video, you have that foreshadowing for possible video to come at the end of this year. All right, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for being a part of this discussion, part of this journey of change. Thank you for being a fellow traveler with me. And I will see you in the next one. Bye for now.